Morocco sits at the hinge of continents, pressed between the Atlantic and Sahara, facing Europe across a narrow strait. Its landmass is larger than the United Kingdom. Its history stretches further back than many modern states. And it asks a simple question from the start. How does one country hold so many climates, languages, and paths without tearing apart? From the air, the outline is severe. Coastlines curve and break. Mountains rise like walls. Deserts begin abruptly.
So if you want more journeys into the unforgiving, the beautiful, and the unknown, subscribe. Hit that button and join us as we explore the places that don't fit on postcards.
This is not a gentle landscape. It is built in layers, stacked and folded by time. The north lifts first, the green ribs of the Rift, then the long spine of the Atlas, and beyond that, the ground loosens and thins until it becomes sand. Each layer dictates how people live, what they eat, how they move, and what they remember. The Atlantic shore is wide and exposed, hammered by wind and long swell. Ports cling to it, whitewashed and practical, facing west toward open water. Inland, the land tightens. Valleys narrow. Roads begin to climb. The middle Atlas carries cedar forests and winter snow. The high Atlas rises higher still, a barrier that splits the country in two. Some passes stay closed for months. Villages sit above the clouds, built of stone the same color as the slopes they cling to. Life here is measured in altitude and weather. Fields are small. Survival is precise. Beyond the mountains, the earth gives way. The Sahara announces itself without ceremony. The soil pales. Vegetation thins, then vanishes. Wind scours everything. The desert is not empty, but it is unforgiving. Distance stretches. Time slows. Caravans once crossed you with salt and gold, stitching North Africa to sub-Saharan routes. What remains is space. Immense in different space. And yet, cities rise. Marrakesh sits where mountains loosen their grip and the plains begin. It was built as a capital, not a port, drawing power from control of routes rather than seas. The city's walls still hold heat from the day. Inside, courtyard hide fountains and orange trees. Markets compress the countryside into alleys. Wool from the mountains, spices from the south, metals worked by hand. At dusk, smoke lifts from food stalls. The square fills with voices, drums, and bargaining. It is not chaos. It is density, a city designed to absorb movement. North and east, the land changes again. Fez lies folded into hills, inward-looking, ancient. Its old city is a maze engineered for pedestrians and animals, not machines. Tanneries stain the air. Water channels cut through stone. Knowledge once moved through these streets in manuscript form, carried by scholars rather than traders. Fez was never meant to impress from a distance. It reveals itself only if you enter and stay. Along the coast, modernity arrives by ship. Casablanca spreads outward, concrete and glass facing the Atlantic. It is industrial, working loud. Finance and factories dominate. The port never sleeps. This is Morocco's engine room, connected more to global markets than to mountain villages. It feels less historic, but it carries the weight of the present. Employment, migration, pressure. Further north, the country narrows. Tangier looks toward Europe across the Strait of Gibraltar. On clear days, Spain is visible. The crossing is short. The histories are tangled. Empires passed through here. Writers lingered. Smugglers moved quietly. Tangier has always been a threshold, never fully one thing or another. Morocco's geography does not merely shape settlement. It shapes identity. Arabic and Amazigh languages coexist, layered rather than blended. Coastal towns look outward. Mountain communities look inward. The desert produces endurance, not expansion. Unity here is not sameness. It is negotiation. The Atlas Mountains deserve their own pause. Atlas Mountains cut the country diagonally, a geological fact with political consequences. Historically, they limited central control. Valleys developed independently. Customs persisted. Even today, villages only kilometers apart can feel worlds removed. Snowmelt feeds rivers that disappear into plains before reaching the sea. Water is seasonal. Nothing is guaranteed. South of the range, the land opens into plateaus, and desert basins. Sahara Desert is not a single landscape, but many. Gravel plains, sand seas, dry riverbeds. Nights drop sharply. Days punish. Nomadic life once matched this rhythm. Now borders and modern states have frozen movement. What was once a corridor has become an edge. History here is not preserved in monuments alone. It is embedded in routes. Roman roads vanish into farmland. Medieval caravan paths align with modern highways. Colonial rail lines still dictate urban growth. Each era leaves infrastructure, and infrastructure outlasts memory. Morocco avoided formal colonization longer than most of Africa, but the 20th century left its mark. Borders hardened, languages shifted, cities expanded unevenly. Independence did not erase inequality between coast and interior, plain and mountain. It exposed it, and yet the country holds together. Part of that cohesion comes from ritual and daily repetition. Food binds regions. Bread appears at every table. Mint tea moves endlessly from pot to glass, poured high, shared slowly. Markets function as social centers, not just economic ones. Even in the largest cities, the pace can pause for prayer, for conversation, for nothing at all. On the Atlantic, winds drive fishing fleets and surf. Towns like Essaouira face constant erosion from salt and air. White walls are repainted again and again. Inland, adobe villages melt back into hills if abandoned. Architecture here accepts impermanence. Buildings are maintained because people stay. When people leave, the land reclaims quickly. Wildlife survives where pressure eases. In cedar forests, macaques cling to shrinking habitat. In the desert, foxes and snakes move mostly unseen. Along wetlands, birds pause their migration, using Morocco as a bridge between continents. This place is not just a destination. It is a passage. Traveling across the country feels like crossing time zones without changing clocks. A modern train glides past donkey carts. Satellite dishes crown mud brick homes. Solar panels rise beside ancient wells. Contradictions are not resolved. They coexist. Religion anchors much of public life, but practice varies by region and household. Rural areas hold tightly to tradition. Cities experiment. Music shifts from mountain rhythms to Andalusian forms to global pop. Festivals appear and vanish. Nothing stays fixed for long. Perhaps the most defining feature of Morocco is its edges. The ocean edge, where waves erase tracks daily. The desert edge, where roads thin and end. The mountain edge, where passes close and reopen with the seasons. And the continental edge, where Africa stares across a narrow channel at Europe. These edges force awareness of distance, of limits, of choice. To move through Morocco is to feel scale constantly recalibrated. Vast spaces compress into crowded streets. Ancient walls shelter modern lives. Harsh environments produce generosity. The country does not explain itself easily. It does not simplify. It endures by balance, between land and water, between movement and stillness, between memory and necessity. And when you leave, the final image is often a horizon, mountains fading into heat, ocean dissolving into sky, desert flattening into light. Morocco does not close with a conclusion. It opens outward unfinished, waiting. Thanks for watching. See you soon. Stay a little longer, and Morocco changes its posture. The country you cross quickly is not the one that stays with you. What remains is not the skyline or the map, but the rhythm, the way time bends, the way sound carries, the way silence arrives suddenly, without warning, even in places full of people. Morning begins early here, but not urgently. Shops open in stages. Metal shutters lift halfway, then fully. Bread moves through streets under cloth. Mopeds weave carefully, not aggressively. The day does not rush to announce itself. It settles in. By mid-morning, the light sharpens. Colors harden. Whites glare. Shadows narrow. Work becomes physical. Lifting, cutting, hammering, carrying. Morocco runs on hands. Crafts are not hobbies here. They are trades passed down because they function. Leather is treated because it must last. Clay is shaped because it cools water. Wool is woven because stone houses hold cold. You notice the sound first. Metal on metal. Wood on stone. The repeated tap of a hammer, finding the same point again and again. There is no rush to finish. Speed is not efficiency. Accuracy is. A mistake costs material. Material costs time. Time costs money, so the rhythm stays steady. Step inside a workshop, and the outside world fades. No music, no chatter, just work. Years of repetition have reduced movement to essentials. Hands know where to go before the eyes do. The body remembers what the mind no longer needs to think about. Then there are the pauses. Tea interrupts everything. Not formally, casually, a glass appears. Sugar dissolves. The pour arcs high, aerating the liquid, cooling it slightly. Conversation resumes, not about grand ideas, but about weather, family, repairs. Practical talk, grounded talk. Morocco's drama is not loud. It lives in endurance. At midday, the heat presses down. Streets thin, doors close. The country inhales and holds it. In the countryside, animals stop moving. In cities, shade becomes currency. Walls matter. Trees matter. Fountains matter. Architecture here is not decorative. It is defensive against sun, against dust, against noise. Afternoon stretch. Nothing important is scheduled then, if it can be avoided. This is when time slows the most. When waiting is not seen as wasted. When patience is assumed. Foreign clocks lose authority here. The body sets the pace. Late afternoon brings movement back. Children spill into streets. Vendors return. Repairs resume. The light softens, amber and forgiving. This is when Morocco looks most cinematic, though no one here is trying to be seen. It is simply when the day loosens its grip. Food arrives deliberately. Not rushed, not plated for show. Meals are shared, not portioned. One dish, many hands. Bread replaces cutlery. The act of eating becomes communal negotiation. Who takes from where? Who leaves the last piece? Who insists someone else eat more? Generosity is not symbolic. It is practiced daily. Evenings carry sound again. Laughter bounces off walls. Televisions flicker behind open doors. Somewhere, music starts. Not staged, not amplified. A drum, a voice, a stringed instrument tuned by ear. Songs repeat lines until meaning dissolves and rhythm takes over. Participation matters more than performance. And then, suddenly, night, temperatures drop. Conversations quiet. Streets empty faster than expected. Morocco sleeps deeply. Darkness feels complete here, especially away from cities. Stars are not decorative points. They dominate. The sky presses close. In rural areas, night brings a different awareness of distance, of vulnerability, of animals moving unseen. Dogs bark not from boredom, but from duty. Doors are secured not out of fear, but habit. Life here has always required caution. What is striking is how little spectacle Morocco needs to hold attention. There are no constant announcements, no pressure to perform culture. What exists does so because it works, not because it is marketable. That authenticity is not curated. It is lived. Travelers often look for highlights. Morocco resists that framing. The country does not peak. It accumulates. A gesture here, a smell there, a half-understood conversation, a delay that forces you to sit still. These moments layer quietly. History, too, behaves this way. It does not announce itself with plaques everywhere. It lingers in habits. In why certain streets curve, in why some families do not move, in why land is held even when it yields little. Memory here is practical. It informs choices. You feel this most strongly in places that appear unchanged. A farming valley, a roadside cafe, a bus station. These are not preserved spaces. They are working ones. Their continuity is not nostalgia. It is necessity. And yet, change is constant. Young people move. Phones glow everywhere. New roads slice through old terrain. Concrete replaces earth. Some skills fade. Others adapt. Morocco is not frozen in time. It is negotiating with it, sometimes successfully, sometimes not. There is tension here, between staying and leaving, between preserving and improving, between what outsiders expect and what locals need. These pressures do not explode. They grind slowly, shaping decisions over years. What holds everything together is resilience without drama. When systems fail, people adjust. When infrastructure lags, communities compensate. When resources thin, sharing increases. This is not romantic. It is survival refined by centuries. Stand still long enough and Morocco reveals its true scale, not in kilometers or population, but in depth. Layers of decision-making stacked across generations. Landscapes shaped not just by geology, but by repetition, by footsteps, by refusal to abandon. The country does not ask to be understood quickly. It rewards those who stop trying to summarize it. Those who accept that contradiction is not a flaw here, but a structure. By the time you leave, something subtle has shifted. Your sense of urgency feels exposed. Your need for explanation feels excessive. Morocco has not changed you dramatically. It has adjusted you slightly, enough to notice. And as distance grows, what you remember is not a single image, but a sequence. Light moving across a wall, hands breaking bread, a road stretching longer than expected, silence arriving at night. Morocco does not end when you depart. It stays unfinished in the mind, quietly, persistently. Thanks for watching. See you soon. There's another Morocco that only appears once familiarity settles in. It shows itself not through landmarks, but through habits you stop questioning. The way directions are given without street names. The way plans remain flexible until the last moment. The way tomorrow can mean anything from dawn to some undefined future that feels reasonable to everyone involved. This is not carelessness. It is trust and adjustment. In Morocco, certainty is less valuable than adaptability. A road might close. A bus might arrive late. A meeting might stretch longer than intended. None of this feels like failure. It feels expected. Life here has always required room for disruption, whether politics harvests borders. Rigid schedules do not survive long in such conditions. So people build slack into everything. Conversations wander. Commitments breathe. The result is not inefficiency, but resilience. When things change, there is space to absorb the shift. You notice this most clearly when something goes wrong. A vehicle breaks down on a remote road. No panic follows. Someone flags down another car. Tools appear. Advice is offered whether needed or not. Repairs happen publicly, collectively. No one asks why it failed. only how to get moving again. Hospitality works the same way. It is not ceremonial. It is automatic. If you arrive unexpectedly, you are fed. If you stay longer than planned, a mattress appears. Questions come later, if at all. The priority is stability in the moment. Details can wait. This instinct runs deep, likely shaped by centuries of uncertainty. Droughts, shifting powers, long distances between resources. You learn quickly that survival favors cooperation over control. Morocco's humor reflects this. It is dry, understated, often self-directed. Jokes are delivered without punchlines, expressions barely shifting. Laughter arrives late, sometimes after silence. Nothing is overplayed. Wit is sharpened by restraint. Language itself carries this subtlety. Much is implied rather than stated. Refusals soften into suggestions. Disagreement hides behind politeness. Meaning sits between words. To listen well here is to notice what is not said. This can frustrate newcomers. Directness feels safer when unfamiliar, but with time, the logic reveals itself. Open conflict wastes energy. Ambiguity preserves relationships. In a society built on proximity, shared walls, shared wells, shared markets, friction must be managed carefully. Privacy, therefore, is different. Homes turn inward. Windows face courtyards, not streets. Life unfolds away from public view. What happens inside belongs to the household. Outside, composure is maintained. Emotions are contained. Respect is visible. This inward orientation shapes spirituality as well. Faith is present, audible, woven into daily rhythm, but rarely performative. It punctuates the day, reminding rather than demanding. The call carries across rooftops, uniting neighborhoods briefly, then releasing them back into their routines. In remote areas, belief merges seamlessly with environment. The land dictates reverence. Weather becomes a teacher. Scarcity sharpens gratitude. Excess is never assumed. Travel far enough from cities, and you encounter Morocco that feels nearly suspended. Villages where generations remain rooted to the same slope. Cemeteries where names repeat. Trees planted by grandparents now shading grandchildren. Change comes slowly here, measured in lifetimes rather than headlines. Leaving these places feels different. There is no dramatic farewell, just a sense of having passed through something intact, something that will continue unchanged whether remembered or not. Roads eventually return you to movement. Traffic thickens. Signs multiply. The modern world reasserts itself. Banks, offices, construction cranes. Morocco's urban centers expand relentlessly, absorbing rural migrants. reshaping identities. With growth comes friction, housing strains, employment gaps widen. Traditions bend under economic pressure. But even here, adaptation persists. Informal solutions arise. Communities reorganize. The city does not erase the countryside entirely. It carries it within. Markets sell produce grown hours away. Dialects mix. Rural customs reappear in urban rituals. Weddings, funerals, holidays pull people back toward ancestral places. Roots remain active, not symbolic. Morocco's relationship with the outside world is equally complex. It has always been open, but selectively so. Ideas enter, but are filtered. Influences adapt rather than replace. Foreign presence is acknowledged without surrender. This creates a quiet confidence. Morocco does not rush to define itself against others. It does not need to. Its identity is layered enough to absorb difference without dissolving. That confidence shows in small ways. In how strangers debate passionately without hostility. In how elders command respect without enforcing it. In how history is carried without being weaponized. There are scars, of course, visible and invisible. Inequality, memory of repression, lost opportunities. But these are not constantly displayed. They are understood, discussed selectively, held with caution. Silence here is not ignorance. It is strategy. Spend enough time listening, and the country begins to speak differently, not in statements, but in patterns, in repetition, in what survives unchanged. Morocco reveals itself not as a destination, but as a process, ongoing, adaptive, unresolved. This is why leaving feels incomplete. There is no final insight, no summary that holds. Each attempt to explain it collapses under its own certainty. Morocco resists reduction. What remains instead is a recalibrated sense of scale, of patience, of what matters enough to protect. The country does not persuade you. It adjusts you quietly, almost without consent. Long after departure, you catch yourself waiting more easily, listening longer, accepting ambiguity, noticing the value of pause. These are not souvenirs. They are imprints. Morocco never claims you. It does not ask for allegiance. It simply leaves traces, subtle, persistent, woven into how you move through the world afterward. And somewhere, whether remembered clearly or not, life continues there exactly as before. Bread still moves through streets at dawn. Tea still interrupts work. Mountains still block roads. The desert still waits. Morocco does not need witnesses. It endures. Thanks for watching. See you soon. There is a moment, usually unplanned, when Morocco stops being something you observe and starts being something that surrounds you. It happens when you are no longer looking for it. You might be sitting in a bus station long past schedule, or leaning against a wall waiting for someone who said they would return soon. Time stretches, attention drifts, and then you notice how everything around you is functioning without urgency, without instruction. People are not idle. They are simply unhurried. The system is alive, but it does not announce itself. This is when Morocco becomes difficult to narrate, because nothing dramatic is happening, yet everything is. Movement here is layered, not fast and slow, but simultaneous. Someone naps on cardboard in full daylight. Someone else negotiates intensely over a minor purchase. A child runs through traffic with absolute confidence. An old man watches all of it without moving. No single pace dominates. Life allows overlap. That tolerance for overlap extends the space itself. Boundaries are flexible. Public and private bleed into each other. A sidewalk becomes a workshop. A doorway becomes a meeting place. A rooftop becomes a living room. Space is claimed temporarily, then released. Ownership is less rigid than use. You begin to understand why control is less valued than presence. To be here is to occupy, not to dominate. Even authority behaves differently. Power is visible, but rarely loud. Influence is exercised through familiarity rather than force. A respected figure does not need to raise a voice. Recognition comes from history, from consistency, from having endured. This is especially visible in intergenerational relationships. Elders are not romanticized, but they are centered. Their authority is assumed, not argued. You've pushed boundaries, but carefully. Change arrives through negotiation, not rupture. Morocco does not discard its past to move forward. It carries it, sometimes awkwardly, sometimes stubbornly, but always consciously. That consciousness appears most clearly in moments of restraint. Not everything is discussed openly. Not every opinion is shared. Silence is not absence. It is filtration. Knowing when not to speak is as valued as knowing what to say. This creates a social fabric that feels dense, sometimes opaque, but remarkably stable. For outsiders, this density can feel like distance. But it is not exclusion. It is depth. Relationships here are built over time, not moments. Trust accumulates slowly. Once established, it is durable. Daily life reflects this long view. Repairs are favored over replacement. Objects are used until they fail completely, then used a little longer. Waste is minimized not by policy, but by habit. Scarcity taught efficiency long. before sustainability became a concept. Even beauty is approached cautiously. Ornamentation exists, but it is often hidden inside homes, within courtyards, behind plain exteriors. What is shown publicly is functional. What is cherished is protected from view. This reverses the logic of display-driven cultures. You sense this especially at night. Behind unremarkable doors, entire worlds unfold. Family gatherings, storytelling, shared meals that stretch for hours, laughter that does not spill into the street. Privacy is not isolation. It is sanctuary. Outside, streets quiet early. Darkness restores scale. Without constant illumination, the environment reasserts itself. You feel how small structures are against sky and earth. How thin the line is between settlement and wilderness. Morocco never lets you forget that it exists within larger forces. Wind shapes towns. Heat dictates architecture. Water determines survival. These elements are not background. They are actors. People respond rather than resist. The land leads. Humans adjust. This relationship fosters humility. Ambition here is tempered by realism. Plans acknowledge uncertainty. Success is measured by continuity, not expansion. That perspective reshapes how struggle is understood. Hardship is not dramatized. It is normalized. Complaints are brief, often humor-laced, and quickly set aside. Energy is conserved for action. Dwelling achieves little. At the same time, joy is not postponed. It appears where it can. A shared joke, a well-made dish, music emerging spontaneously. Pleasure is allowed, even when conditions are difficult. Especially then, this balance between endurance and enjoyment is one of Morocco's quiet strengths. You encounter it unexpectedly, in laughter after a long delay, in generosity offered by those with little margin, in celebrations that ignore economic logic entirely, weddings that proceed regardless of cost, funerals that gather entire communities without invitation. These moments reveal what holds society together when formal systems fall short. Community here is not an abstract value. It is operational. People rely on networks more than institutions, on reputation more than documentation, on memory more than record. This creates vulnerability, but also resilience. When one node fails, others compensate. Modern pressures challenge this structure. Migration thins communities. Urban anonymity grows. Digital life competes for attention, yet the underlying logic persists. New forms emerge. Old habits adapt. Morocco is not resisting change. It is metabolizing it. This becomes clear when you stop comparing it to elsewhere. The urge to measure, to rank infrastructure, efficiency, comfort, fades. Those metrics explain little here. Morocco operates on different priorities: stability over speed, relationship over transaction, continuity over optimization. Once you accept that, frustration dissolves. What remains is curiosity. Why does this work? Why has it endured? Perhaps because Morocco never pursued purity. It never sought a single identity, a single language, a single model of progress. It accepted complexity early and built systems capable of holding it. The result is not perfection. It is friction, but friction generates warmth, movement, life. By the time you realize this, you are no longer searching for meaning. You are simply noticing. Details register without analysis. You begin to trust the pace. And then, almost without warning, it is time to leave. Departure feels oddly understated. No final revelation arrives. No conclusion presents itself. Morocco does not summarize. It lets you go with unanswered questions intact. That restraint is deliberate. The country does not try to convince you of its importance. It does not demand admiration. It does not close with a statement. It continues. Somewhere, as you move away, someone is waiting patiently. Someone is fixing something instead of replacing it. Someone is pouring tea slowly, letting conversation unfold. Morocco does not linger loudly in memory. It settles quietly, and that perhaps is its most enduring mark. Thanks for watching. See you soon. Eventually, Morocco begins to feel less like a place you are passing through and more like a current you are moving within. You stop asking where things are going. You notice instead how they continue. Days no longer separate themselves cleanly. They bleed into one another, linked by routines that repeat with slight variations. A shop opens later than yesterday. A conversation resumes without needing to restart. Someone remembers you, not by name, but by circumstance. Recognition here is situational. You are known by where you were last seen. This changes how you understand belonging. In Morocco, belonging is not declared. It is accumulated. It builds quietly through repetition. Return to the same cafe, walking the same street, acknowledging the same faces. Over time, your presence becomes expected, and expectation here is a form of acceptance. There is no ceremony for this shift, no signal. One day, prices stop being tested. Directions become shorter. Smiles linger a fraction longer. You have crossed an invisible threshold. The country begins to speak to you in fragments, a phrase overheard. a gesture that explains more than words, a glance exchanged at the right moment. Meaning arrives sideways. Morocco communicates obliquely, trusting that understanding will catch up later. This way of living demands attention, not vigilance, but awareness. You learn to read atmospheres, to sense when to move and when to stay, when to speak and when silence will carry more weight. Over time, this sensitivity extends inward. You become more comfortable with incompleteness, with stories that never resolve, with plans that shift mid-course. Morocco teaches you that coherence is not always immediate. Sometimes it arrives long after the experience itself. There are moments when this is unsettling, when nothing is explained, when outcomes remain ambiguous, when effort does not guarantee clarity. But these moments are not errors in the system. They are features. They reflect a worldview shaped by forces larger than intention. Here, control is understood as temporary. The land reinforces this lesson repeatedly. Rain arrives or does not. Winds alter routes. Heat changes priorities. People respond rather than insist. Adaptation replaces expectation. This responsiveness extends to emotion. Joy is not scheduled. Grief is not hidden, but it is contained. Displays are measured. Excessive emotion feels inefficient, even indulgent. What matters is endurance, the ability to continue without collapse. Yet, when emotion does surface, it is unmistakable. A sudden outburst of laughter, a sharp rebuke, a spontaneous celebration. These moments cut through restraint with precision. They do not linger longer than necessary. Expression is allowed, then released. This balance keeps life from tipping too far in either direction. It prevents stagnation without inviting chaos. You start to see how Morocco has survived so many transitions without losing its core. Empires came and went. Borders shifted. Systems were imposed, then removed. Through it all, daily life remained structured around practical truths. Eat when food is available. Repair what breaks. Maintain relationships. Respect forces beyond control. These principles are not written. They are lived. As you move deeper into the rhythm, you realize how little spectacle is required to sustain meaning. A single well-told story can occupy an evening. A shared task can replace entertainment. Presence becomes a currency. This stands in contrast to places where distraction fills every gap, where silence is avoided, where productivity must be visible. Morocco is comfortable with pauses. Waiting is not dead time. It is time in suspension, a space where observation happens, where thought settles, where the environment reasserts itself. In these pauses, you begin to notice details previously ignored. The way light shifts across textured walls. The sound of footsteps approaching long before they arrive. The subtle hierarchy in seating arrangements. Who speaks first? Who pours tea? Who waits? Nothing is random. Even informality follows structure. Understanding this does not make Morocco predictable. It makes it legible. You stop mistaking difference for disorder. This clarity arrives gradually, often unnoticed, until one day you find yourself explaining the logic to someone else and realizing it has already become internal. At that point, departure feels inevitable, not because there is nothing left to learn, but because Morocco does not allow mastery. It resists final comprehension. To stay indefinitely is to accept perpetual adjustment. Leaving becomes another transition, handled without ceremony. Goodbyes are brief. Promises are vague. Come back carries more weight than a date. Distance does not sever connection here. Memory bridges gaps easily. As you move away, the country does not follow you with reminders. It does not demand nostalgia. It trusts that what mattered will surface on its own. And it does. Weeks later, you catch yourself slowing down unconsciously, letting conversations breathe, accepting uncertainty without immediate correction. You recognize the influence only in its absence. Morocco has recalibrated your expectations. Not dramatically, not visibly, just enough to shift your internal balance. You realize that efficiency is not always progress. That clarity is not always necessary. That continuity can matter more than resolution. These are not lessons taught explicitly. They are absorbed through exposure, through living briefly within a system shaped by endurance rather than urgency. Morocco does not follow trends. It outlasts them. Its strength lies not in monuments or narratives, but in its capacity to continue under pressure without losing coherence, to adapt without dissolving, to change without forgetting. That continuity is its quiet achievement, and somewhere within it, life proceeds at its own pace, unconcerned with observation, indifferent to interpretation. Shops open, roads fill, tea pours, repairs continue. Conversations resume mid-sentence. Morocco does not wait to be understood. It moves on. Thanks for watching. See you soon.